Hey, this is Zachlog the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Chris
Hello.
and Nate,
Hey, everybody.
and we are getting together tonight to talk about A.E. Housman's poem, The Oracles. Before we get to that, I did want to mention, if you like my work, if you would like to support me, you can go to subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great, and the link will be in the show description. And you can sign up to support this channel there for I have settings for $1 to $5 a month. So for as little as 1 cup of coffee a month, you can no. For some reason, I always think of a Scottish accent when I do those things. I don't know why. There's one of those commercials from back in my childhood, and the person it was a woman with a Scottish accent. Anyway, so as I said, we are talking about The Oracles by A.E. Housman. Nate has volunteered to read it for us, although the mic is still a little off. Let me see. I'm gonna put it up on the screen here, and then he's gonna go. And you guys can let me know when you see that.
You believe this guy talking grief about my DeWalt mic as though Hammer makes like perfectly good sound equipment?
The mic works fine if it's right in front of your mouth, but that's not where it has been. Anyway,
What we can do.
When you're ready.
The Oracles by A.E. Housman. 'Tis mute, the word they went to hear on high Dodona mountain, when winds were in the oaken shaws and all the cauldrons told, and mute's the midland navel stone beside the singing fountain, and echoes list to silence now where gods told lies of old. I took my question to the shrine that has not ceased from speaking, the heart within that tells the truth and tells it twice as plain. And from the cave of oracles I heard the priestess shrieking that she and I should surely die and never live again. Oh, priestess, what you cry is clear, and sound good sense, I think it. But let the screaming echoes rest, and froth your mouth no more. Yes, 'tis true, there's better booze than brine, but he that drowns must drink it. And oh, my lass, the news is news that men have heard before. The king, with half the east at heel, is marched from lands of morning. Their fighters drink the rivers up, their shafts benight the air. And he that stands will die for naught, and home there's no returning. The Spartans on the sea-wet rock sat down and combed their hair.
Okay. Thank you, Nate. So, Chris, since A, you are not the person who read, and since B, you haven't been here for a while, would you like to start us off with your first thoughts on this poem?
Sure. I mean,
would it be would it be good for me to give a quick plot rundown, possibly? Because this one's should I go ahead and do that? Because this one's a little obscure if you don't know the references.
Well, it's the Battle of Thermopylae, which
Yes.
I was somewhat familiar with. To get some of the specific lines, I did have to read through the Wikipedia entry. But yes, it is quite fascinating. I do think it's funny that people kind of like make out the Spartans, like, which they were legitimately, awesome. But there were also like a lot of, other groups with them, even though, the Spartans are like, known as kind of being like the most awesome warriors. But yeah, I mean, it's the Battle of Thermopylae is cool. It's about the Battle of Thermopylae. It's like, guy goes, well, what's going to happen to me? you're gonna die. Well, that's gonna happen to everybody. So it's just sort of taking like all the things that people already think is cool about like Leonidas and the Spartans and the Battle of Thermopylae, and it's just sort of like amplifying it and putting it to meter.
Yeah, it's that's what really caught my attention the first time I read this, which was I believe it was in this book here, and I'm throwing it on the floor. That is one of the There Will Be War series by Jerry Pournelle, which there are, I believe, 10 books so far, and a new editor has taken over and is going to be extending the series. And if you haven't read these books, I highly recommend them. There's some really good stuff in there, although there is also in one of them one story that just I hated so much I couldn't even finish. Anyway, but like I said, that was what really caught my attention, is just this expression of the the very stoic kind of approach to this. It's like, yes, we are well, it's let's see, 'tis true there's better boost than brine, but he that drowns must drink it. And it's like, yeah, this is kind of awful, but if we don't really have a choice, the only other choices are worse. So let's go with this, I guess. And yeah, so go ahead, keep going, Chris.
Oh, well, I mean, I guess I don't have like a whole lot to say other than just like in general, I really like ancient Greek stuff. I actually prefer this over the like entire movie 300. I know it was very popular when it came out, but I was watching that movie and I was like, I don't understand why a straight male would want to watch this movie. Whereas this, it's actually like kind of putting you in Leonidas's head instead of making him some sort of like just mythic figure wearing very little clothing for some reason. But it's like, even then, like, it still hits like a lot of the big notes, like the just sort of like just how big of an army they were actually facing, like how almost supernatural the threat comes across as. The arrow shafts blocking the air.
And
blocking,
we will fight in the
blocking
shade.
sun. Yes. And just sort of in general, just sort of the feeling that you get when you think of like how the Spartans were, which, I mean, to be fair, this is like the only scenario where the Spartans actually come across as like good guys. Because a lot of things in their society were just extremely terrible. But if all of a sudden you need Greece to unite against a common threat, then yeah, you want them on your side. But yeah, like as far as the poem itself, though, like a lot of it, like once you know the references, it's actually pretty straightforward, and like you can dig into the themes a little bit, but I feel like it's not trying to be as deep as like other poems might want to be. Like this is, I feel like, just kind of taking an event from history that people think is really cool and just sort of showing it off.
Nate, how about you?
I like it, except for the first two lines of the second stanza, because no, the heart doesn't tell the truth. The heart tells you a bunch of bullcrap, and is constantly changing So you kind of take your heart as like, thank you, heart. I'm glad to know how you feel about this. Now let's make a decision based on, other things, and, instead of letting your heart always truth.
Well, I don't know if in terms of like the intent of the poem, I don't know if it's talking about like he consult. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think that's the intent of the poem. It's just that anytime I see that sentiment, it irritates me because I've been staunchly that idea since I was like 14.
I actually interpreted that as being Apollo, not the narrator's own heart, but that he went to the oracle at Delphi, and the heart within would have been Apollo.
Yeah, it is interesting the way it starts off, and I read at least one interpretation where they talked about like this as an expression of atheism and like and not believing in afterlife, and I'm like, well, maybe, but I also don't know if that's just a case of a modern critic putting their own ideas on top of the story. It's like, and I don't have I have very low trust in most recent literary critics to honestly interpret something that's not from our time, because it's like, not. There are other subjects than there are other subjects that people wrote about than gay sex, but if you listen to most modern literary critics, that is literally all anyone in history ever wrote about.
Like sort of, the sort of main idea of the poem. Then I don't feel like it's going to all of a sudden, just be so chuffed about like the Oracle of Apollo. I think he spends a lot of time sort of throwing shade at all these oracles, kind of like the same way I talk about horoscopes. Like, yeah, thanks, that's generally true. Thank you for the very vague notions of what going to happen to everybody. You will have an opportunity to change your life. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, so everyone will. May not be a big change. They'll be there. I slap that jerkwad at work that I don't like. I mean, that'd be a big change, but not necessarily if it's better. But anyway, I just like that sort of like, well, it just takes this whole supposedly divine message, and it's just like, well, yeah, just for the warning, I guess. You will die. Uh-huh. Am I going to die well? Am I going to die for a reason? Okay, then I'm good with it. Thanks. I guess I fall off a bar stool somewhere.
Well, and even like from the context of the story, whereas basically like, hey, in order for like Greece to have any hope, like you're going to have to die in this engagement. But he's a Spartan. He's like, the only way he gets the good afterlife in Elysium is if he dies as a great hero. So it's kind of like, it's like, well, yeah, like that's what we're setting out to do.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah,
exactly.
Listen here, I want to go to Spartan heaven. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got some options. Okay, you've got Tartarus, which is if you like really screw up. You've got Elysium, which is if you're an awesome hero, and then everyone else gets into Asphodel, which is apparently just kind of meh. So it's like if you're a Spartan and you're not a badass warrior, then you're pretty much going to Tartarus. So your only option is to be ridiculously and stupidly brave, because that's the only thing that guarantees you a good outcome overall.
There's worse ways to structure the values of your society. There are better ways, but there are worse ones too.
Now,
Bravery and valor in battle are genuinely good things to pursue. Not the only thing, maybe not the best thing, but they are good things.
I mean,
and
I just love how nonchalant the Spartans really are. They're like, oh, hey, cool, yeah, earth-shattering military power coming our way. Better look fresh for the fade, boys.
Well, and that was most of what I know about the story of Thermopylae and the background of that, like a few historical subjects, comes from Dan Carlin, and his he did a series several years ago called Kings of Kings, which is about the Persian Empire and their interactions with the Greeks, which ended with the Persian Empire being conquered by the Greeks, which they did not expect. I'm quite sure. But yeah, and like one thing he explained in there was like when Xerxes, is that it?
yes.
So yeah, when Xerxes is coming to Greece for this, and by the way, this is a revenge story for him, because they had a previous fight with Greece, which, for reasons still people don't really know, they lost, which really wasn't supposed to happen. Given the numbers and the general success record of the Persian Empire, that was not what was supposed to happen. And then he's like, okay, we'll come back and get these guys, and show them show them who they're messing with, which didn't happen for several decades at least. And anyway, the Xerxes is coming up to this coming up to where this battle will be, and he has with him an exiled Spartan who is basically serving as his guide. And when they get there, he's like, "I look at how few there are. They're not actually gonna fight us." And his guide says, there are Spartans there. I assure you, they will, and it's going to be worse than you expect. And he's like, and he says, my scouts tell me they're sitting down and combing their hair. And and the exile who was with him said, yeah, that's what they do before a fight. And so, yeah, and just the image of these guys, like, well, we're gonna go out. Most of us are probably going to die. May as well go out in style. Get that hair nice, boys.
It reminds me of the story from the American West, where in Silver City, now Carson City, Nevada, there's a young guy who's going to challenge an infamous gunfighter, Farmer Peel. Langford Peel was his name. They call him Farmer. And everybody knows that Langford Peel is A, kind of hard to provoke, but B, incredibly deadly. Like, he is a no kidding legendary gun hand. And so this kid spends all day saying, hey, this afternoon I'm gonna fight Langford Peel. Everybody's like, people trying to talk him out of it. He goes and he gets he buys a fancy suit of clothes. He goes to the barber, he gets his hair done, he gets a nice shave, gets all trimmed up, gets all dandied up for the fight. People like, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, well, by today I'm either going to be the boss. By the end of the day, I'm either going to be the boss of Carson City or the prettiest corpse in the graveyard. And Langford Peel killed him. That's why I remember his name and not this kid. But so if you're going into a desperate situation, you might as well look good, right?
Yeah, and it is also worth keeping in mind that Xerxes, I think it's actually Xerxes too, but he built up like an army that was like several times more massive than what he would have actually needed, which actually ended up being kind of interesting because they either had to keep moving forward or retreat because otherwise the supplies wouldn't last. So Thermopylae, like having a small pass, like even though it was like a small group against a big group, the small group, if they could have held on maybe unrealistically like a day or two more, it's conceivable that Xerxes would have had to retreat because an army that size needs a ridiculous amount of supplies. And if you're not moving forward and scavenging, then people are going to start to go hungry.
Yeah, and logistics as we understand it today, to supply a military is a very modern thing. Um, basically, I don't know the dates. I'm not like a great military historian, but that was pretty much how battles were fought throughout most of history. Like you don't you cannot continuously supply an army in the field because just transporting the food like transporting the food and everything to supply them, like that's more work than assembling the army in the first place. And so
It is today.
Yeah, go ahead.
It has a vast and powerful military, and we have a lot of people in uniform, and more than 3/4 of those people are either in support or logistic role. So
Well,
our actual, like, these guys are here to fight you, is actually a relatively small minority of the troops we put into the field. Most of the people we put in there, hey, these are the guys that are going to feed those guys. These are the guys that are going to, make sure that, they get boots and food. These guys are the guys that are going to do their mail. There's a huge, huge logistical tail, even in modern warfare, because to feed an army, you need another army of people feeding them.
one of Rome's biggest strengths was basically just bureaucracy and organization. Like they could field armies for long periods of time whenever their enemies just couldn't.
Which that also ultimately is what destroyed the republic, the republican form of government, because as they had structured the army, it was supposed to be only landowning Roman citizens. But if you are, when they started, having almost continuous campaigns, you can't have like the people who are supposed to be home, growing your food out in the army, and it started radically changing how politics went in Rome, which that's rather far afield, but that happens in these talks.
To tie things back together, I mean, Rome actually succeeded in one sense against the Greeks, but then Greek culture just took them over.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, don't bet against the Greeks.
But
go ahead, Nate.
But I also kind of love how he talks directly to the oracle, and he's like, "Oh, priestess," he's like, "Calm down, sweetie. It's okay. You can knock off all that hollering. We get it. We're gonna die." Thanks. Just like I said, I agree with Chris. This is pretty much a face value poem. It's just like, here you go. Here's the thing. It's like, thank you. That's a nice thing. But really, it's not like to pluck out threads of deeper meaning. It's just like, nope, that's what that is.
Yeah, it's like you can cut the theatrics. I'm not a tourist. We can just talk like adults here.
But let the screaming echoes rest and froth your mouth no more. Yeah, well, and it's the other thing with that, and it's again, it does what good poetry does. Like it compresses things into a very small package, because like in just those kind of those 4 lines, there's this kind of like, it's not cynicism, but it's, well, like I said, stoicism is definitely part of it. It's like, okay, yeah, that sounds about like the story. So what are we gonna do? And the king with half the east at heel is marched from lands of morning. Their fighters drink their rivers up, their shafts benight the air. So yeah, we're gonna die. Okay. You got anything else? Any news I didn't know?
Just double checking. I mean, if the oracle would have been like I don't know, here's the secret weakness of the army. Just like send one guy in there to like poison the beer or something. They could have gone with that. But no easy way out. Well, then we'll do what we have to do.
They have an ex-Spartan in there who's going to tell them how to flank you. Oh, well, that's good information. Thank you. How do we deal with that?
Yes,
one?
If you believe
the thespians are going to drop the ball guarding the goat pass. There was like 700 of them there or something, and their whole job was just guard this pass. But apparently what happened was the Xerxes army, like whenever they were told about the path, they were sneaking up it, and by the time they actually like realized, the thespians realized, wait, the enemy's passing by, they weren't sure what to do, and it just took like a few volleys from the opposing army, and they're like, we're gonna sit this one out for now. We've already lost. Good luck, Spartans.
Spartans are like, that's the problem.
But now that's making light of it, but like apparently there wasn't much that they felt they could do at that point. Like it was kind of already over. Yeah.
I haven't read it myself, and I should read like some of Herodotus, but if I understand correctly, according to his account, someone, which was also in the movie, like someone betrayed to the Persians like the secret of, by the way, there's another way around this place where they're holding you up, and if not for that, then again, in Herodotus' version of events, the Spartans actually may have been able to hold them up for those 2 or 3 days more, until they're like, well, I guess we got to go home now because there's nothing more to eat.
And also worth noting, their whole plan, Thermopylae was only half of it, because it was also a naval battle, like kind of same concept going on. Because the army, the Persians were marching on land and they were sending their navy down. So it was basically this group holds them on land, and then we've got our own navy to hold them off in the water. And I think they both ended up having to retreat. And then that navy ended up being bringing everybody to safety, because once the Persians got through, they were just going to raise everything. So they were actually, it's kind of like Dunkirk. Like even once things were like too far gone to have a victory then and there was almost a victory in just getting enough people to safety where they'd fight on a future day.
Well, and also another interest. Oh, go ahead, Nate.
Now, what's really interesting about this whole fight of the Spartans against the Persians, and especially this whole idea of this this Persian fleet, is that later on in the Peloponnesian War, the Athenians have, sea people. They're a maritime empire where the Spartans maintain land power. Well, they actually contract with the Persians, and they essentially ally with them and use Persian money to build a war fleet to go fight the Athenians.
Oh, right. I think that was actually another thing from that Kings of Kings, where basically Persia decided the best way to deal with the Greeks was just to keep them fighting each other. And so, like, you know, stir up trouble, and then, if one side looks like they're losing, here, have some more money, go fight some more against those guys over there, please. Those guys, and don't bother us. Let's you and him fight is the phrase I've heard.
Yes. So this is very frustrating to me in particular, because I've been, like, very slowly, but I've been studying a little bit of ancient Greek. And it is very frustrating because each one of these city-states had their own version of ancient Greek. But they could not get along until much later. And by that point, stuff had diverged, but it was just sort of like merged together in just an unholy combination of things. Like, it's almost as bad as English. Like, it's
I was waiting for that.
It is very bad because there's, like, multiple systems for, like, how to decline things based on, oh, well, this is what they did in this area, this is what they did in this other area, and then they're like, oh, here's a bunch of words that have unique declinations that aren't used in anything else because they were used in another area. And yes, it's very frustrating because all these different dialects just sort of got shoved together. And it wasn't until the Romans were around and they were like, well, now we have to speak Greek and this is a mess. So we're just going to formalize this.
We're going to organize this Roman style.
Yes, and that's where you get Koine Greek, which is what the New Testament is written in. And even then you would think, oh, it's settled now. But no, after a few hundred years of that, people wanted to sound really smart. So they started going back to the ancient Greek and using that in their writing so that they sounded smarter.
I see.
Oh, so that's kind of like people today who try using Shakespearean English, but they have no idea what thee and thou and, like, why some verbs end with T. And so they just, if you have any kind of ear for it, they just sound like idiots.
Yes, but yeah, so all of the Greek city-states fighting each other and going at it, like, all of this is, like, a part of the ancient Greek language. Like, all of that gets factored in. There's no real consensus on pronunciation of anything because it varied so much from area to area. Like, it is a complete mess. You have people that study ancient Greek literally for decades, and they still get to works that they just can't get through without a gloss. Like, it's ridiculous.
Just wait until 500 years from now, people are trying to read modern English.
Well, that's just it. It would be like reading modern English from, like, all across the U.S., England, New Zealand, Australia, and just trying to study all of that as one language.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think it's that bad. It's the Australians. They have some very strange ideas about word usage down there. But, like, American English and, British English, we'd be like, yeah, okay, that's pretty much the same. There are a few stumbling points, as noted in the ideas that be careful who you're speaking English with, because in Britain to smoke a fag means enjoy a cigarette. In America, it means to use a firearm to kill a homosexual.
But
as for the poem, I think we've pretty much talked about every line of it.
I will say I did a little research way back when I was recording this first, and I don't know if I don't think I found anything about this. An Oakenshaw, by the way, is just a grove of oak trees. And that one. I don't know what the Midland Naval Stone and the Singing Fountain is. I'm not sure what that's referring to. I don't know if either of you have an idea there.
I just assumed that was related to the Oracle of Zeus on a Dodona mountain. Like, I just kind of was like, well, maybe all of that goes together.
Or divination locations of some kind.
Or it occurred. I don't know, and this is kind of a almost random guess, but I kind of wonder if it has something to do with Poseidon. Like, they tried Jupiter, they tried Zeus, then they tried Poseidon. But that's almost a random guess at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've really heard of an Oracle of Poseidon, but I mean, I guess there's no reason there wouldn't be. But yeah, I think Zeus and Apollo were the big ones. And then Athena was the goddess of wisdom, but I don't remember hearing much about it, like some big oracle from her.
Well, it's a navel stone and a singing fountain. Although, in this one, at least, navel is spelled like belly button, which is even weirder. I don't. Although that could have supposed to have been NAV. Is it NAVAL? Would that be relating to the Navy? I don't know.
But even then, it's a Midland naval stone, so probably not near the water.
Yeah. Maybe he went and saw a jeweled belly dancer. Who knows?
So, okay, my understanding, and this is drawing from different sources, so again, this is more speculation than anything, but a lot of the oracle stuff was basically women getting high on stuff that was like coming out of the earth, like vapors or something that were coming out. So it would make sense that you would find something like that near some sort of a fountain or a spring. So yeah, like, I just kind of put that whole paragraph as just being like, yeah, we went go ask Zeus what he thought, and he wouldn't say anything. Which, okay, honestly, that sounds like a kind of a bad thing too, because it's like, hey, Greece is in danger. Let's go ask the main god of the Greeks what we should do, and he is just ignoring you.
Leave a message at the sound of the beep.
I'm sorry, the god that you were requesting is not available right now.
Please leave your offerings and your message, and we'll return a thunderbolt when we have a moment.
Okay, so Nate, do you have any last thoughts on this poem that you would like to put in tonight?
Yeah. Aside from, live bravely and die well, no, not really.
Chris, how about you?
I mean, nothing in particular. Like, obviously, as Christians, we don't believe in trying to divine the future from, pagan gods and stuff. But within the context of the poem, I mean, I don't know. I guess they were going about the right way, and they had kind of as best an ending as they could have. So that's something.
Okay. Well, in that case, thank you both for joining me tonight, and God be with you.
Have a good one.